The Age of War Chapter 2 brings 2 new building sets to Conan Exiles. We've already reviewed the Pyramid set, but the second set is now on the bazaar, and that is the War-Torn Nemedian Ruins. This bundle is unlike anything else in the game, but is it worth your money? Today we'll be finding out. Quick disclaimer, this set was given to me by Funcom, but as with previous reviews, that will not affect my recommendation or lack thereof. So without further ado, let's get started. Beginning with the details, the War-Torn Nemedian set is priced at 1000 Grom coins, just over $8. The set includes 21 pieces over 3 categories, of which there are war-torn foundations and walls, roofs and floors, and windows and doors. There are some placeables in this set too, a broken door and 4 rubble piles. We'll touch on these a bit more later. In terms of design, these pieces are, well, quite obviously targeted at building ruins. They are in the Nemedian style, copying pieces from the People of the Dragon DLC, but distressing and partially destroying them. People of the Dragon is, in my opinion, one of the best DLC packs, so on the purely aesthetic front, the War-Torn Ruins look fairly nice, and they do capture the damaged and ruined aesthetic quite well. The set has multiple variants of walls, roofs, ceilings and foundations, designed to offer more variety in the design of destroyed pieces and to introduce pattern breaks. This does work quite well in its aim, and the wall pieces in particular flow nicely together and make for a pretty convincing design that looks damaged but still retains some of that strong look that Nemedian usually has. I think the glaring question that everyone will be asking about this set is, can you practically use it? Sure, the pieces are ruined, but is it easy to use? No, not really. The walls are fine and the ceilings can be okay, but the roofs and foundations are a bit of a pain. The walls do not have stability sockets on the top, makes sense seeing as they're destroyed, but that makes building stuff difficult. The roof pieces generally behave somewhat well, although their interaction with the damaged wall pieces is frustrating, but the smaller damaged roof, which is probably a third of the usual size, has to hang from things it can't sit on top, which, makes sense, but it is a bit strange to work with. The door frames and window frames are intact, and they do have stability sockets, so there is something of a solution baked in. Due to the lack of sockets on the walls, building things purely out of this set is pretty much unfeasible. It can be done, but it requires either a very small build, ceilings of a different material pack to offer support, or overuse of the door frames and windows that provide the upward socket. So if there's not enough stability to go around, how exactly do you make this set work? Well, for some reason when I came into this review I was thinking of this set as sort of a standalone, which is obviously the wrong thing to do. Much like Sandstone Timber or Stormglass Cathedral, this set is meant to accompany the Nemedian set. I know, obvious, but apparently not to me. When you use the two sets together, the results are considerably better. Rather than having an entirely ruined build, you can have segments that are damaged, and it makes a lot more sense. This also helps to cover a lot of the weird intricacies and weaknesses with the War-Torn Ruins, which works out well. That being said, there are still some issues with this set. There is the aforementioned socket issue, but again that is alleviated by mixing it with the actual Nemedian DLC, but there are still smaller problems that can occur, they're just easier to work around. The other issue lies in the placeables, namely the rubble pieces. As of October 11th, 2023, the placement on these is straight up broken. As you can see by this clip, yeah, not great. That clip at the start with the rubble next to the door, I had to find the 1 pixel gap where I could place them and then move them with Pippi's own move tool, so not ideal in the slightest. I've reported this bug, and the good news is that other people have also reported it on the forums, and it has been marked as report received, so the devs are aware of it, and hopefully it gets hotfixed pretty quickly. When you do actually get the rubble to work with the destroyed pieces, it works very well in selling the effect, especially with the smoky rubble. Aside from that issue, there don't really seem to be any other glitches with this set, it is just very different from anything else. Before we get to my final verdict, the question I asked myself was, who is this set really aimed at? I think the answer is probably role players, but I worry that it's far too niche. Let's look at the Debaucheries of Decketo DLC for an example. That DLC was most definitely aimed at role players, but what did it add? It added treehouse foundations, bridges and stage pieces, alongside placeables, war paint and armours that PvE, PvP and role players still use. Let's be honest, role players were the most likely to be using stuff like stage pieces and chessboards, but pretty much all the building items from that DLC are useful. Sure, I don't think they're the biggest help to the PvP crowd, but the PvE folks consistently get good use from those pieces. Contrasted with the Nemedian War-Torn bundle, I think the vision here is too rigid, so much so that it's only kind of relevant for a tiny subset of the player base. Role players make up a small, though considerable minority of the players, but then if you look deeper into it, the amount of role players who would actually build Nemedian structures and at some point would want to have parts of it ruined are probably very, very small. That, at the core, is my main issue with this set. It's targeted at a very specific niche and doesn't really retain the flexibility of things like stages or bridges from the Decreto DLC that can work well in a multitude of settings. So, the real question at hand, is it worth buying the Nemedian War-Torn Ruins bundle? For 99.99% of players, no. Even if the set was cheaper, I don't think that this is something most people will use. I will likely use it a few times, but it's so incredibly niche and considerably inflexible that I don't think many people would really get their money's worth out of using it. Outside of the stability concerns and the issues with the placeable rubble, I think this set is nicely designed, and if you want to build a ruined or partially ruined base, there's nothing quite like it. Again, it's just so niche that I can't really justify recommending it to anyone. Much like with the Pyramid set lacking a few useful items, I think the vision for the Ruins pack was perhaps a bit too rigid, and that ends up making it pretty prohibitive for most people. That being said, that's not to take away from Funcom's work, because I can't really think of a better way to do a Ruins pack like this. I think it's just a concept that again is very highly focused to a very, very small amount of the player base. If you can see yourself using this regularly, it's probably not a bad shout, as there's nothing else like this in the game, but again, it's incredibly niche, and if you were considering getting it, I would encourage really thinking about how often you're going to use it. Overall, the Nemedian War-Torn Ruins bundle unfortunately does not get my recommendation for the vast majority of people. I will say, as a side note, because of how different and unusual this set is, I have the feeling there might be some building tricks you can do with this set that you can't do with others. I haven't found any yet, but if myself or somebody else does find some, I'll cover it in the future. If you've already found some, or you just want to voice your opinions on this set, feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and of course a massive thanks to our wonderful esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. I'm definitely going to try and weave this into some builds in the future. I think it does work really well in moderation, especially with a bit more practice. I'm curious as to what build sets we're going to see in Chapter 3, but we've still got a little while to go until then. Again, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you soon.